Good day, fellow board members. My name is Ebony MacArthur, and today I will be presenting a high-level overview analysis on servant leadership for DBA 810, Research as a Tool for Management Decision-Making, Project 3. We all recently received the announcement of the retirement of our current CEO and are all excited about May moving from her position as head of operation into the role of CEO of Brookshore. In our last board meeting, we were presented with a research study on servant leadership, suggesting that a culture of servant leadership can assist organizations such as Brookshore with maintaining high performance during a time of transition. But before we pursue this course of action based on the findings of a single research study, I have taken the initiative to pursue other evidence-based research articles on the topic to present a more well-rounded analysis using an evidence-based approach before making such a drastic change to the culture of our organization. In this presentation, I will thoroughly define servant leadership as well as take a closer evaluation of the original article presented to the board titled Achieving High Organization Performance Through Servant Leadership by Melchar and Bosco, 2010, followed by an analysis of a better alternative article on the research topic. After comparing both articles, recommendations based on my findings of the evidence will be provided to the board. The model of servant leadership as proposed by Robert Greenleaf in 1977 seemed well suited to providing employees with the empowerment and participatory job characteristics that are related to both employees and customer satisfaction. Servant leadership is a philosophical set of practices that enhances the lives of individuals, builds healthier organizations, and ultimately generates a more caring world. Greenleaf identifies that servant leadership focuses on others rather than self and distancing oneself from using power and influence and position to serve self, but instead gravitating to a position where the instruments are used to empower and serve others. The research design evaluated in the original article presented to the board by Melchar and Bosco indicates that the purpose of the research is to investigate whether servant leadership can develop a corporate culture that will attract or develop other servant leaders. The study was conducted by assessing 59 employees of 3 high-performing automobile dealerships, first via interviews to establish a baseline for current existing leadership behaviors of servant leadership. Following the interviews, the employees were given Barbuto and Wheeler's 2006 Servant Leadership Questionnaire to assess mid-level service managers for determining whether their employees considered them to exhibit servant leadership behaviors. The findings concluded that modeling of servant leadership can produce an organizational culture which can advance leadership qualities among low-level managers. But my initial concern after evaluating the article was that no evidence was provided in the methodology to support this initial research. The title actually implies that the article will be focused on high organizational achievements by focusing on a culture of servant leadership, but the abstract illustrates that the evidence will investigate whether a servant leader can develop a culture that attracts and develops other servant leaders. The sample selection and sample size also deemed to be insufficient for the study, and the response from managerial candidates was so low that the data from their questionnaires were not included at all in the analysis. Quantitative and qualitative design approaches were utilized, but the study indicates that only 27% of questionnaires responded, 91% male and 9% female, and no details were provided at all within the study as to how the respondents were selected. The Barbuto and Wheeler questionnaire was used to also evaluate 5 factors of servant leadership characteristics. All 5 factors were indicated to be significantly correlated. Due to the low number of subjects for each individual dealership, ANOVA testing was used to determine if there was any significance between subject differences based on organizational membership. The ANOVA was performed for influences such as age, education level completed, and number of years with each respondent's current employer. The research findings suggest that no significant correlation was indicated between servant leadership and these variables. The mean was used in the study to determine that all 5 factors reflected as servant leaders. Also, the coefficient alpha for Barbuto and Wheeler's 2006 study was compared to the current study. Each of the 5 factors for both studies indicated correlation above 0.5, ranging from 0.8 to 0.92. But the rationale for the analysis method was not provided in the study. The methodology for the study was poorly outlined in the research, which limited the ability to determine causation. The research purpose also implies that there is a cause and effects relationship of the effects on employees when servant leadership is applicable within an organization. However, the methodology doesn't reflect any comparison or side-by-side analysis of various leadership styles. In conclusion of the evaluation of the study by Melcher and Boscow, the research design was experimental. Interviews followed by questionnaires were used to collect the data provided in the study, which is a common means for quantitative data collection. However, the sample selection and sample size was insufficient and no rationale was provided for the methodology. The validity and reliability, internal validity and external validity of the study was not met because no cause and effect relationship was established and alternative explanation for the study findings could not be eliminated. In addition, the conclusion of the study cannot be applied outside of the research because the study concluded that the servant leader model offers a positive alternative to other leadership theories, but the research did not provide any evidence to support this conclusion and no other theories were investigated in the study. After thorough evaluation of the research study by Melcher and Boscow, I began to take a look at additional scholarly evidence-based studies on servant leadership that could present a better methodology on the topic using the keyword servant leadership and high organizational performance. After evaluation of 4 articles on the research topic, I found that the 2020 study conducted by Brown et al., The Moderating Effect of Servant Leadership on Transformational, Transactional, Authentic, and Charismatic Leadership provided a better evidence-based approach on servant leadership. This study was selected because it offered an outlook into the influence of servant leadership on various leadership styles within an organization. The blueprint of the study is more aligned with the future organizational culture and leadership goals of Brookshire Industries. The purpose of the article titled The Moderating Effect of Servant Leadership on Transformational, Transactional, Authentic, and Charismatic Leaders focuses on whether leaders who embody servant leadership are more effective as transformational, transactional, charismatic, and authentic leaders. This study conducted data collection from 416 employees across many industries. The data was collected through the use of multi-surveys using anonymous ID coding. This method was utilized to prevent survey fatigue as well as to allow the data from multiple surveys to be linked together. Data collection occurred during an organizational behaviors course, which is a part of a master's program on organizational leadership. The findings of the study concluded that leaders should consider the breadth of their leadership talents across many forms of leadership in conjunction with servant leadership. The evidence provided in the study demonstrated that intentions and strengths of multiple forms of leadership simultaneously and congruently is a better fit for the organizational culture and what we're looking to achieve at Brookshire as well. The surveys were all conducted within a single semester, and several instruments were used within the study to assess the 5 forms of leadership that was evaluated. The instruments used in this study were all multidimensional, but they were each treated as unidimensional to provide an overall rating for each construct. The research for this study was clear and defined, and all of the overall data provided was used to support the conclusion as well as the methodology of the study. The sample selection method was not indicated in the study, and the participant-specific professional industries was not evaluated or determined in the study. However, the evidence provided in this study still provides a better lens into the full scope of servant leadership. Hypothesis 1 states that servant leadership will positively moderate the relationships between 10 transformational leadership and various subordinate attitudes and behaviors. Hypothesis 2 states that servant leadership will positively moderate the relationships between 10 transactional leaderships and various subordinate attitudes and behaviors. Hypothesis 3 states that servant leadership will positively moderate the relationships between 10 authentic leaderships and various subordinate attitudes and behaviors. And hypothesis 4 states that servant leadership will positively moderate the relationship between 10 charismatic leadership and various subordinate attitudes and behaviors. A number of instruments were utilized within the study to assess the 5 forms of leadership and the 10 individual subcomponent level outcomes. For servant leadership, a 28-item scale was utilized, and the Cronbach alpha for that instrument was 0.94. For transformational and transactional leadership, a survey using multi-factor leadership questions was utilized that consists of 20 and 12 items, and the Cronbach alpha for that was 0.95 and 0.88. For authentic leadership, the authentic leadership questionnaire was utilized, which is a 16-item questionnaire, and the reliability for that instrument was 0.94. For charismatic leadership, a 25-item scale was used to measure charismatic leadership, and the reliability scale for this study was 0.90. Again, the use of surveys and questionnaires are a common instrument to measure quantitative data. The Cronbach alpha is also a common measurement of internal validity. Cronbach alpha is used to measure the internal consistency or scale of reliability of a study and how closely related a set of items in a group are. The Cronbach alpha of 0.70 and above is considered good, 0.80 and above is considered better, and 0.9 and above is considered the best. This measurement indicates internal consistency for all 5 servant leadership styles as well as the 10 subcomponents in the study. In conclusion, the study by Brown et al. Indicated that all 4 hypotheses were partially supported. The results support H2 by indicating that servant leadership is most beneficial to a transactional leader. This is likely due to the lack of relationship depth because transactional leaders operate best when relationships are less personal and more transaction-based. These leaders typically are willing to step up and serve even when not reciprocated. Servant leadership had the least impact on transformational leaders. Transformational leaders typically are tasked with creating a vision and inspiring and motivating others, making servant leadership a better proxy for transformational leaders in spite of their differences in focus. Authentic and charismatic leaders who possess servant leadership qualities can be considered as more ethical leaders and more caring people. Even the overall low-level impact of servant leadership with other leadership styles can have a great impact on an organization. The overall study provides a strong support towards the positive input of servant leadership on other forms of leadership. The design of the research is similar to Melchar and Boscal and was experimental, which can pose some room for common errors. Because of the lack of data concerning the sample selection and industries of the respondents, replicability of the study would be challenging. The validity and reliability of the evidence was strong based on the Cronbach alpha data that was provided for each leadership style and subcomponents. The internal and external validity of the study was strong as the use of multidimensional instruments were able to provide the elimination of alternative explanations. Also, the population sample was large enough with a 95% or more response rate to determine that the conclusion represented the population of the study. The evidence presented in the study can also be utilized in other situations, such as the current situation at Brookshire Industries. The transferability of the study is also strong as this evidence can be used with different environments, people, circumstances, and measurements. A philosophical viewpoint of both research articles will be evaluated in this presentation in order to provide an overview of the theoretical framework and the method of cognition and perspective which was used to obtain the knowledge of reality and to design, conduct, analyze, and interpret the outcome of the research. A side-by-side comparison of the philosophical perspective depicting the ontology, epistemology, and anxiology of the study by Melchar and Boscal as well as Brown et al. Has been depicted in this table. The research considers what is observed through study and experimentation as well as what is real and can be measured, and also if the researcher's opinion and experiences impact the research. In comparison, the original study provided to the board by Melcher and Boscal purpose was to investigate whether servant leaders can develop a corporate culture that attracts other servant leaders, but the title was not supported by evidence-based research and didn't reflect the actual study. 59 employees were used for this study, but only 27% of the respondents replied to the questionnaire, and no demographic information was provided for the sample, including the number of employees excluded from the study. Interviews were initially conducted to establish a baseline for servant leadership behaviors, followed by Barbuto and Willis' 2006 Servant Leadership Questionnaire, but the study didn't provide any evidence to why the automobile industry was their target audience. Internal and external validity of the study was weak because the cause and effect relationship was not established, and the conclusion of the study could not be applied outside of the research because the conclusion was not supported by the findings or the purpose of the study. The article by Brown et al. Focuses on leaders who embody servant leadership and their effects on transformational, transactional, charismatic, and authentic leaders. The title is supported by evidence-based research and reflects the research and methodology provided in the study. 416 respondents were evaluated in the study, with more than 95% of the data coming directly from the respondents. No data was provided in the study concerning the reasoning for the sample selection or the professional industries in which the respondents were connected to or employees of. The data was collected using multiple instruments and surveys using anonymous ID coding, and 4 hypotheses examined to influence the servant leadership of different leadership styles. The internal and external validity of the study was strong and can eliminate alternative explanations of the findings, and the evidence is deemed reliable and has the ability to be transferred to other situations by concluding that leaders should consider a vast scope of leadership abilities across many forms of leadership. Based on the results of the research conducted by Brown, Marinan, and Partridge, I am recommending to the board that this research is more aligned with the future organizational culture and leadership goals of Brookshire Industries. The study concludes that leaders should consider a range of leadership talents across many forms of leadership styles in combination with servant leadership. According to Brown, the quality of a good leader is more valuable when they can present various leadership combinations. A leader who simply embodies any single form of leadership often lacks qualities that can be beneficial in distinctive circumstances. However, leaders who have the ability to embrace a well-rounded viewpoint can provide a unique benefit to an organization. It is also indicated by the evidence that adopting this leadership culture in times where stress and uncertainty is present, similar to this time of transition at Brookshire Industries, servant leadership qualities can vastly improve transformational, transactional, authentic, and charismatic leaders within an organization. The study findings by Melcher and Boscal do not support enough evidence-based research to utilize the study for the future of our organization. The research design methodology and conclusion of Brown's study can provide a more credible blueprint for shifting the culture at Brookshire Industries. Through the use of multi-dimensional study designs, the research was able to extend beyond the mere development of servant leadership to taking a closer look at various types of leadership practices and their interactions with servant leadership practices. This study limited itself to employee-centered outcomes, but outcomes at the team and organizational level are worthy of further examination. If we are all able to use our leadership strengths to set clear goals based on servant leadership practices, we will see an overall shift in cultural and leadership goals throughout the organization. Thank you for your time and attention today. Any feedback or questions is highly encouraged.